public education system and Common Core curriculum, where did it come from? Okay, so you see on your screen a man by the name of Robert Mueller. Who is Robert Mueller? Born in 1923, maybe most well known for his role as Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations. But it is his spirituality that led him to take on these jobs. This man had a spiritual purpose. He was on a mission. And his spirituality is essentially to strive for world peace. Sounds good on the surface, but let's go deeper. And he also believed in creating a global education curriculum. Well, he has been called the philosopher and the prophet of hope of the United Nations. Robert Mueller is known as a deeply spiritual person. Okay, that's fine. What spirit? Which spirit are you talking about? It's not enough to say you're spiritual today. Which spirit are you talking about? He has seen a strong connection between spirituality and the political/cultural scene. Some of Bob Mueller's advice. Here's a quote. He says, decide to open yourself to God. Once again, what does he mean by God? He says, decide to open yourself to God, to the universe, to all your brethren and sisters, to your inner self, to the potential of the human race, to the infinity of your inner self. And you will become the universe. You will become the universe. And you will be at long last your real and divine, stupendous self. So is this what we want our children to be influenced by? I mean, some of you may be thinking, that sounds good. That sounds right. Yeah, maybe my children should be influenced to become infinity. Here's an excerpt from Mueller's 1989 UNESCO Prize for Peace Education. This is from his acceptance speech. He says, I pray that all human beings on this earth become instruments of peace, thus fulfilling the cosmic function deeply engraved in each of us and for which we were born and allowed to live temporarily on this beautiful planet in the vast universe and eternal stream of time. This peace of the world is the sum total of the peace of all individuals. The peace of the world is the sum total of the peace of all individuals. Essentially, it's gobbledygook. It's flighty, and it sounds like, well, how could you take someone like this seriously? Well, this man was the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations. This is the man who developed the United Nations University of Peace in Costa Rica. This is the man who was known as the philosopher and the prophet of hope at the United Nations. So he is in position, or he was in position, to cause and affect great change. And we'll see what that change has been. What type of peace? What is this peace? So what philosophies and prophecies of hope does this internationally influential political and spiritual leader bring to the world? Let's see. According to the preface of Robert Mueller's World Core Curriculum, the underlying philosophy upon which the Robert Mueller School is based will be found in the teachings set forth in the books of Alice A. Bailey. Any bells ringing now? And this is where we get directly into where we can draw a direct line from Common Core curriculum directly to Luciferianism. Alice Bailey was a Luciferian, and everyone following in those footsteps is following in the same tradition. Robert Mueller's mentor, key influences was Utant, who was Mueller called him his spiritual master. Utant was a Burmese diplomat and also Secretary General of the United Nations from 1961 through 1971. Utant was a Buddhist, a Marxist, and a supporter of global government. Certainly a globalist, a socialist, at the very least. Utant also told Robert Mueller that the world will not change and find peace if there is not a new education. This new education is becoming a reality through Robert Mueller's World Core Curriculum. What is Robert Muller's New Age World Core Curriculum? He is known as the father of global education. The core curriculum that we see today in 41 states, the District of Columbia, 4 territories, and at the Department of Defense, this is the curriculum standards. As a former Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, Muller's clout in the international community is impressive. It should not be surprising, then, that Muller's World Core Curriculum is discussed in United Nations circles as an innocent and useful education tool. At the United Nations 56th Annual DPI NGO Conference in September 2003, a workshop explained how Muller, quote, developed a core curriculum to teach the whole child, included hygiene, gardening, vocational training, marketing, entrepreneurship, as well as values and respect. Which values? Respect for what? Not mentioned here was the level of seriousness of the presence of occult and New Age philosophies and practices that are just rife, spread throughout Robert Muller's program. The first Robert Muller School, as they're known, opened in 1979 with dozens more following. Thousands of people now use his program, and Muller believes every school in the world should teach his curriculum. So what are the key points of Muller's message that he wants everyone on the earth to know and subscribe to? 2 major points here. His spirituality and the idea of unity under the United Nations. So, as we've already seen, Muller believes in the divinity of humanity, that man is God. God lives inside of man. That is clearly the New Age idea, the Luciferian idea of divinity. That is the original lie from Genesis 3, the Garden of Eden, is clearly a subscriber to the idea that man is God. In other words, this is Gnostic teaching, and to a Gnostic, the Bible is inverted. So if you look at what happened in the Garden of Eden, the serpent is the hero. That's how Gnosticism works. And that's what we're seeing here. Muller was deeply influenced by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a Jesuit priest who taught that all of humanity would eventually meld into one super being through the coming of the cosmic Christ. This is an accepted belief that there is a coming cosmic Christ, a consciousness of Christ, not a real Jesus Christ and a second coming, but a consciousness. Muller's world curriculum framework includes teaching on spiritual exercises of interiority. In other words, going inside yourself to find God. Also, meditation, communication with the universe, eternity, and God. These spiritual exercises, meditation and mystic communication, are clearly and obviously marks of the New Age spirituality, the New Thought movement, the New Gospel. There are many names that the New Age operates under today. This is the belief system. According to the United Nations Online, the scope of the World Core Curriculum will always be the same, to allow the student to see himself truly as an integral part of the cosmos. At the moment, it seems the only limitation will be the imagination of the cosmic-minded and spiritually oriented teaching staff. We shouldn't forget also what the World Core Curriculum itself tells us about Muller's source of inspiration. So, Utant, the globalist socialist, and Alice Bailey, the Luciferian, the channeler. So the underlying philosophy upon which the Robert Muller School is based will be found in the teachings set forth in the books of Alice Bailey and her Tibetan teacher, Dwaj Khul. This is not a real man. This is an entity. Alice Bailey's writings were channeled from an entity, and the company in which those books were published under was known as the Lucifer Trust, known today as the Lucis Trust. Lucifer was a bit too provocative, I guess they figured out. And the teaching of Moria as given in the Ajna Yoga series books. So Alice Bailey, the Luciferian channeler of spirits, is at the core of Common Core. She's at the heart of the Common Core system. A little more about who Alice Bailey was, in case you haven't seen the previous Prophets of the New Age video. Alice Bailey was born in 1880, died in 1949. She was a New Age leader and a channel for this person known as DK, or Dwaj Kul. Bailey's Luciferian channeled messages from DK are published through her organization, as we just said, the Lucis Trust. And Lucis Trust is affiliated with United Nations non-governmental organizations. In fact, Lucis Trust gained consultative status with the United Nations in 1989. So what spirit is controlling the United Nations? Is it God who sent his Son into the world? It's not that God. This is the man-made New Age, cosmic Christ. It's the deception. A part of the curriculum, of the core curriculum, is to teach a sense of spirituality so that the kids will understand that they can communicate directly with the cosmos, the universe, whatever that is. Whatever that is. And now a little bit, that's the spirituality. Now, what about this unity? What sort of unity is Muller speaking of? What sort of unity is taught in this core curriculum? Muller's core curriculum teaches a socialist political unity established under the United Nations. Here is something that Muller has said specifically about that. History, quote, history will prove that Gloria Crook, Utant, and the United Nations were right. The quicker all educators and media will listen to them, the quicker we will get out of the present confusion and find a new, promising way of our progress and evolution. According to New Man magazine, Muller's World Core Curriculum is meant to, quote, steer our children toward global citizenship, earth-centered beliefs, socialist values, and the collective mindset which is becoming a requirement for the 21st century workforce. Gloria Cook, who was just mentioned, is the founder of the first Robert Muller School in Arlington, Texas. And she speaks of the importance of the United Nations in this process of global citizenship. She says the curriculum was born out of Robert Muller's 40-year experience with the United Nations, and it will be discovered that an understanding of the United Nations, its structure and purposes, will be a most rewarding factor. So what's obviously going to be taught in Common Core? They're going to teach our children to be global citizens, to treat your government as God, as your God. Ultimately, what they're truly teaching is that government is your God. What's best toward Luciferianism and socialism? Is that what we want for our children? The specific teaching that came from Alice Bailey was this quote: they want to correct the errors of home training. That is directly from Alice Bailey's writings, and the idea that has been adopted by this World Core Curriculum, this Common Core Curriculum, that is, they want to correct the errors of home training. So if you have a child, you don't know how to raise a child. You don't know how to teach your child anything. That's up to us here at the government. So what about Common Core? Where is it? Where has this been adopted? As I said earlier, 41 states, the District of Columbia, 4 territories, and at the Department of Defense. So this map provides information about the process each state or territory followed to adopt their academic standards. I want to give you this link. It's called corestandards.org, C-O-R-E, standards.org. And you can find this map, and you can see what's going on in your state. So there you go. 41 states, the yellow states that you're looking at, have not adopted Common Core standards. So God bless Alaska, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Virginia, South Carolina, Florida. There's still some sanity out there. How about give it up for Puerto Rico? Right there. Puerto Rico, not ready to go down the Luciferian path just yet. But as we have just learned, this is not just about English, language arts, and mathematics and science. This has to do with teaching a very specific doctrine, a very specific new age, new spirituality, a new gospel to your children. And maybe you're one out there who you're not a Christian. You don't think that there's any merit whatsoever in following Jesus Christ. Do you believe that it is your right to teach your child, to raise your own child, to instill morals in your own flesh and blood? Because these people do not believe that is your right. They think that you are in error from the start. As Alice Bailey wrote specifically, they are trying to reverse the errors of home training. So that's an introduction to Robert Muller, the grandfather of World Core Curriculum. It's scary stuff. We had better pull our heads out of our butts and start paying attention to what's going on all around us. Maybe we need to stop focusing on what Donald Trump had for lunch, or where Hillary Clinton tripped in the street this week, and start paying attention to what's going on in our backyards, in our own hometowns, at our schools, in our local governments. That's where the United Nations has set up shop. That is why the news media directs us toward the circus every day. They want us to watch the circus that they're providing for us so that we don't pay attention to what's going on in our backyard, as the Luciferian doctrine moves right in and trains our children to become just like the beast. This is the time for submitting and following Jesus Christ. This is the time for that. God bless you all, and thank you for joining me. Please hit that like button. Do that subscribe thing. But whatever you do, share this information with people so they can know what's really going on.